Quarantine hotels being resold at higher prices by agencies. COVID caseload fell slightly, but infections are found in many schools. And state media quotes Xi Jinping's comments on Hong Kong as handover anniversary nears. Good evening and welcome. Since the government released the city's border control measures in May, allowing non-residents to travel to the city, there's been a growing demand for quarantine hotels.
Even though more hotel rooms have become available, bookings are hard to come by. TVB News has found some agencies have been holding rooms, then reselling them at much higher rates. Christy Khan has details.
Last Thursday, the government announced the latest batch of designated quarantine hotels. They include 62 premises offering a total of about 23,000 rooms. But most were already unavailable for booking on that day. Frankie, a Hong Kong resident who is now in South Korea and hoping to return, said he could not make a reservation. However, he found that on certain social media platforms, some people claimed they could help with quarantine hotel bookings. James, who wants to travel to Hong Kong from Taiwan, had similar experience. Some mainland social media platforms even showed various agencies offering one-stop services for booking quarantine hotels in Hong Kong and return flight tickets to the mainland. According to the official website of Cordis Hotel in Hong Kong, their rooms have been fully taken up in July. But an agency said they could help book the rooms in late July, charging about $5,000 more than the overall cost listed on the website. A TVB reporter contacted the agency, whose staff claimed hotels do not want to sell the rooms at the regulated prices, which are low. So instead, they opt to sell the quarantine hotel rooms through different agencies for higher profits. The Cordis Hotel is yet to comment on the matter. The current government policy does not seem to specify all quarantine hotel rooms have to be booked via the hotel's official websites. As many Hong Kongers are struggling to reserve rooms, a legislator suggested the government should refine the current policy, such as allowing local residents to have priority in making hotel reservations. Christy Khan, TVB News.
Another day, another four-digit COVID caseload in the city for the sixth day in a row. The caseload fell slightly today to 1,198 with 22 cases imported.
No new COVID-related deaths were reported today, but hospitals are preparing for a possible rebound in admissions. Jackie Lin with more.
The 1,000-plus local COVID infections reported today involved new cases from more than 140 schools. They include St. Francis Xavier School in Tsuen Wan. 11 infections are linked to their extracurricular classes. 7 of the 17 students on its basketball team have contracted the coronavirus. Also infected are 3 students and 1 teacher who attended the school's Muay Thai class.
For basketball and Thai boxing, during the exercise, even though it is outdoors, but they have taken off their masks and there is contact. As for in-classroom, the possibility would be lower because they would have their masks on.
Another possible outbreak at FDBWA Sito Ho Secondary School in Kwun Tong, with 4 new infections from the same class. At St. Stephen's College, 3 more students and a teacher came down with the virus. Altogether, 6 infections are linked to the school. One of the 4 earlier reported infections from CCC K1 Primary School in Aldrich Bay is suspected to carry the Omicron BA2 subvariant. A residential care home worker in Kwai Chung also tested positive. 6 senior residents have to be quarantined as a result. Tony Ko, CEO of the Hospital Authority, says the number of COVID-related admissions is higher than a few weeks back. In a bid to tackle a rebound in cases, the authority is setting up a high-level emergency response command center, which could mobilize more than 1,000 hospital beds within a few days. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Macau reported 13 new COVID infections, bringing the city's cumulative total to 49 positive cases. Meanwhile, its three-day citywide nucleic acid testing exercise ended at noon today with more than 670,000 people undergoing tests. Authorities said all residents are required to perform rapid antigen tests tomorrow. Some Macau residents rushed to take their COVID tests before the end of the testing deadline. Apart from the 7 community testing stations, all temporary testing centers were closed at noon. The government said a yellow health code would be assigned to those who haven't completed the nucleic acid tests before 3 p.m. Additionally, police will take them to designated places to undergo sampling, and they are not allowed to leave until they test negative. People who refuse to take the COVID test will be required to undergo 2 weeks of medical observation at a designated venue.
Hong Kong's consumer price index rose by 1.2% in May compared with the same period last year. The underlying inflation rate, netting out the effects of the government's one-off relief measures, rose by 1.7% year on year. That's a rise of 0.1 of a percentage point from that of April 2022. The increase was mainly because of higher electricity charges as well as the cost of eating out and taking away food. A government spokesman said external price pressure was expected to remain notable amid rampant inflation in some major import sources, yet a domestic cost pressure remains mild. Overall inflation should stay moderate in the near term.
Ahead of the 25th anniversary of the Hong Kong SAR, People's Daily has published an article that recapped President Xi Jinping's past speeches on the city.
Meanwhile, next Wednesday's LegCo meeting has been canceled to reduce the possibility of lawmakers getting COVID. Caleb Leung reports.
香港一直牵动着我的心.
Hong Kong's development has always pulled at my heartstrings. That was what President Xi Jinping said when he arrived in Hong Kong on June 29, 2017 for a 3-day visit. In an article published yesterday by People's Daily, which used the quote as the title, the state media outlet said Xi has always been concerned about the city's prosperity and stability, and that his heart is linked to Hong Kong people's interests and well-being. The article also recapped past speeches made by Xi on Hong Kong, noting that development is the SAR's most important mission and is also the golden key to resolving various issues. The article mentioned that Hong Kong needs to integrate into the national development while engaging with the world. With the support of the central government and the Chinese people, the article said the implementation of one country, two systems in Hong Kong will enter a new chapter. With a little more than a week before Hong Kong celebrates the 25th anniversary of returning to Chinese rule, it is understood that major official functions will be held on June 30th and July 1st. Those invited to attend, including lawmakers, must enter a point-to-point closed-loop management between their residence and office premises starting this Thursday. They must also undergo quarantine at a government-arranged hotel the day before attending an event. In view of the situation, Legislative Council President Andrew Leung has cancelled next Wednesday's council meeting. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
The United States Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act related to Xinjiang takes effect today. Under the act, the U.S. claims the right to seize goods imported from the Xinjiang region. That's unless companies importing the goods can provide clear and convincing evidence that no component was produced by slave labor. A foreign ministry spokesperson said the allegation of forced labor in Xinjiang is a huge lie made up of anti-China forces to smear China. It represents an escalation of U.S. suppression of China under the guise of human rights. In Geneva, China's permanent representative to the United Nations, Chen Shu, said constructive dialogue is needed on the basis of equality and mutual respect.
Coming up after the break, local residents sad after jumbo floating restaurant sinks. Chief Executive Carrie says Lantau project is key to solving land shortage problem. Russian journalist sells Nobel Peace Prize for supporting Ukrainian refugees. A major loss for Hong Kong after the jumbo floating restaurant capsized during bad weather in the South China Sea on Saturday.
Since it was towed from the harbor last Tuesday, the incident has many demanding answers from the company responsible for operating the vessel. Timothy Lee has more.
A prominent sign in the shape of the Imperial Temple of Heaven, a pier modeled after an ancient Chinese court, and a capsized kitchen. These are the remains of the once glamorous jumbo floating restaurant. The icon's parent company, Aberdeen Restaurant Enterprises, said the floating restaurant capsized near the Paracel Islands in waters that are 1,000 meters deep. The company added that any salvage operation will be extremely difficult. But the incident was kept from the public for 2 days. TVB reached out to Aberdeen Restaurant for more details, but the company has yet to respond. Some people are disappointed and saddened by the sinking, while others have criticized the company operating the vessel. This man witnessed the vessel being towed away from the harbor and was shocked and upset when he heard the news of the accident. This man bemoaned the loss of the floating restaurant, saying that a piece of Chinese heritage was now lost. Back at the Legislative Council, LegCo member Peter Kuhn lambasted Aberdeen for its failure to address the accident. He noted that the fate of the jumbo floating restaurant was of great concern among the people of Hong Kong. With the vessel now lost to sea, some people are cooperating with the city's higher education institutions to recreate the famed restaurant through a simulation experience. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Overseas now, in the latest twist to hit the UK's rail strike, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is planning to bring in temporary staff to take over from the more than 40,000 people who have laid down their tools. Press reports say Johnson accused the unions of making too high demands of pay as the biggest rail strike in 30 years brings parts of the UK to a standstill. Union leaders said talks with rail operators have collapsed. The Trade Union Congress said Johnson's move will threaten the safety of the public and ensure the dispute will extend into a long and bitter saga. Amid soaring costs of living, rail workers are demanding higher pay in line with inflation and better job security.
Russia appears to be making good on a prediction from Ukraine's president that it will escalate its attacks this week.
As fighting intensifies in the industrial heartland of eastern Ukraine, residents in the hard-hit region are rushing to evacuate. The Ukrainian army said today fighting to gain full control of the key city of Severodonetsk remains fierce, but they managed to repel Russian advances at several locations in the Luhansk region. A regional governor released images of a fire at a school in Donetsk after it was hit by Russian shelling. The official said about 200 schools in the region have been destroyed since the invasion began. As Russian forces concentrate their offensive to capture the Donbas region, area residents are boarding special evacuation trains as they rush to safer cities in the west. Shells are landing everywhere. The children are scared. Everybody's nerves are on edge, says this woman. It's a miracle that volunteers picked us up and helped us. Ukraine's deputy prime minister said today 1.2 million Ukrainian citizens have been forcibly taken to Russia since the start of the war. Irina Vereshchuk said the estimate includes 240,000 children. Ukraine's president said Russian airstrikes in Kharkiv and Odessa and brutal offensives in the Donbas are nervous reactions from Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky said his country is moving to ensure no one doubts that Ukraine deserves candidacy for European Union membership. The European Commission's recommendation for candidacy is to be discussed later this week in Brussels. Hello. Zelensky earlier welcomed Hollywood star Ben Stiller to Kyiv. Stiller is touring Ukraine as a United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Goodwill Ambassador. He says it's hard to understand the level of destruction without seeing it firsthand.
You see it on TV, you see it on social media, and you know, it's something else to actually see it and feel it, and then to talk to the people.
On Monday, a Ukrainian presidential advisor said Russia is preparing a large-scale attack with 6 warships that appear to be preparing for a massive launch of missiles.
A Nobel Peace Prize that Russian journalist Dmitry Muratov put up for auction to raise money for Ukrainian child refugees sold last night for $103.5 million US. That shatters the previous record for the most ever paid for a Nobel Prize, $4.76 million in 2014.
The auction house that handled the bidding on World Refugee Day says the price tag is off the charts.
I'm stunned. I don't really know what happened in there. We knew that there were a lot of interested parties. We knew that there was a tremendous groundswell of interest in the last couple days. That is a tremendous sum of money, and it really opens up the doors for a more profound way to sort of address refugee crises and displaced peoples everywhere.
Muratov was awarded the Nobel last October. He was honored for his battles to preserve free speech in Russia. Muratov says the proceeds will go directly to UNICEF in its efforts to help children displaced by the war in Ukraine. Well, in addition to the red-hot inflation, American consumers are now facing another challenge.
Though retailers may have kept some prices unchanged, shoppers are getting less for the same price. NBC News looks into the phenomenon.
If you feel like there's a little less cereal in your box these days, it's not your imagination. It's actually called shrinkflation, when products get smaller, but the prices stay the same.
It's kind of the sneaky way to pass on a price increase.
And with supply chains backed up across the globe and inflation at a 40-year high, experts say it's happening now more than ever. Family-sized Cocoa Pebbles, Charmin Ultra Soft, Dawn Ultra Dish Soap, Bavino Moisturizing Lotion, all items Edgar Dworsky of ConsumerWorld.com has caught shrinking just in the last few months.
This is one of those things that people probably won't realize because no one really looks at the ounces, right?
Well, that's exactly the problem. Manufacturers know that consumers are price sensitive, but they also know that consumers are not net weight conscious. So they're more likely to be able to get away with one of these backdoor price increases.
None of those brands have responded to our request for comment. Experts say companies can use packaging tricks to mask the changes, so to really tell how much you're getting, keep your eye on net weight or net contents displayed on the box or the bag.
8-piece wings.
And it's not just in the grocery aisle. At Domino's, $7.99 used to buy you 10 wings. Now, because of the rising cost of chicken, you'll get 8 for that same price.
Manufacturers are very good about promoting bonus pack, 20% more on the package. You're never going to see them say, look, 20% less.
Now, regardless of size, companies are complying with state and federal laws if they are putting the item count or the net weight on the packaging, which means at the end of the day, it's really up to us as consumers to pay very close attention.
Chief Executive Carrie says the city now has the ingredients to implement Basic Law Article 45 on bringing universal suffrage in the selection of the CE.
Speaking on a TVB program, Lam also defended the Lantau Tomorrow project. Jackie Lynn reports.
The shortage of housing and land has troubled the city for years, but the problem is still unresolved, with a waiting time for public housing breaking records year after year. Speaking at TVB Pearl Straight Talk program, Chief Executive Carrie said the key is finding more land, especially new land such as the reclamation from the Lantau Tomorrow project.
That's why I have been making very strong appeals. Please let us do the Lantau Tomorrow reclamation, because that is new land created, at least 1,000 hectares in the first phase. But if you look back at history, Hong Kong's success lies in creating land.
Lam has long declared that she does not own property in the city, and it seems she's not planning to do so.
Will you consider buying a property in Hong Kong one day?
Probably not. I'm too old already.
But Lam noted the city is moving in the right direction as Hong Kong approaches the 25th anniversary of the handover.
In terms of faithfully implementing one country, two systems, Hong Kong is now on the right track. In terms of safeguarding national interest and security, Hong Kong now has a national security law.
With this background, Lam said Hong Kong has a constitutional duty to implement Basic Law Article 45 on universal suffrage in the selection of the chief executive.
Since the improvements, we now have a broadly representative 1,500 election committee, which will, under BL 45, become the nominating committee. We now have, by law, a candidate eligibility review committee to ensure that the candidates are patriots. In my view, we have all the necessary ingredients for moving forward.
In recent comments, Lam has said her conscience is clear over her 5 years of governance, but she said she is used to criticisms.
I've been very used to that sort of lack of appreciation in the various things that I have done. So I have been guided by the conviction as a public official that never mind about personal glory.
Lam said the community now has a common objective, which is to make sure that one country, two systems will succeed. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.